Hello, everyone.
Hello, hello.
Welcome to the first episode of Book Nook Brews podcast, or Book Nook Brews podcast. My name is Alexa,
And I'm Pablo.
and this is the beginning of a new journey.
Yeah.
This is a podcast about, honestly, it's just a little book club where we read one book every month, kind of space it out to where every week we talk about a couple of chapters of the book, give our thoughts, and really dissect the book just a little bit and just have something to talk about. Because I feel like sometimes when you read a book, you just want to talk about it with someone or hear their thoughts on maybe a certain part that happened in the book. And so that's what this is for.
Yeah, and I feel like it's a very good opportunity for a lot of people to also get different points of views of, or not point of views, but like reviews of a book because we are two different types of readers.
Yes.
And I guess that's how we could segue into the little introduction. Because I know I'm a way different reader than you, obviously. So I enjoy like straight up fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I can read anything else unless it's something that really, really interests me. Like, I think the only nonfiction book I've ever bought or I've ever even attempted to read was not even attempted to read. I only bought is that Oppenheimer one when the movie came out.
You also bought another one. It was like a wizard one, but I think you only read like one chapter of it.
No, but I said nonfiction.
Oh. Yeah, the only nonfiction
Yeah,
one.
the only
Yes.
nonfiction or even non-fantasy, I think, book that I've ever bought. Well, no. Because I've bought, like, back when I was in, the first year of maybe college, I maybe bought a couple of the John Green books. Never read any of them.
I thought you had a book also of like Bobby. I forgot his name. He's a rapper that you listen to.
Oh, no. Yeah, Logic.
But he goes by Bobby now.
He goes by Bobby, yeah.
Yeah.
But both of those books or his first book was fiction and fantasy too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he made his own story completely. But then the other book was his memoir. So that one, I bought that one just to have have it there, but I haven't actually read that either. So all this to say that the only books I've ever read were true, like pure fantasy, being
like what are some examples?
Percy Jackson and the Olympians. That's probably one of the bigger ones that I've read. Then there's Harry Potter by Thou Who Shall Not Be Named.
Nope.
What else? Then there was that one I was starting to read that reminded me of a little bit of both. I think it was called The Magicians.
Yeah, that one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that one had a sci-fi show as well and stuff like that. So it's stuff like that I'm into. So, but here in the podcast, we're going to be reading a plethora of genres. So I think it's a good opportunity for various types of readers to get an actual insight on what different types of readers think about the same book.
Yeah.
Because then, so me being a fantasy reader, but then also not that big of a reader, like something has to really interest me to read it. Here, I'm going to be, in a way, forced to read every book and give my honest opinion about it. So whether you like to read or not, or looking to get back into it, or only like fantasy, or just one certain genre of books, you're going to get the point of view of someone similar, someone that doesn't like that. And you're also going to get the point of view of someone who just reads anything you put in front of them.
Literally. Yeah. I mean, my favorite one to read, one that like my favorite genre to get through and like highly enjoy, my little escape, are my rom-coms.
Yeah.
Those are just like, or Oh my gosh, I am gonna lose out on the name of what it is. I'm saying rom-coms because that's like similar to how it is in like a genre of movie, and I am losing out on what the name it is, but those are the kinds of books that I like. The most recent one that I just finished was by Emily Henry. Emily Henry, the Book Lovers, and I have like multiple of her books, but like those are cozy reads about romance with a little bit of comedy, a little bit of spiciness. Those are my favorite ones to read, but I will honestly read anything. I'll read fantasy, I'll read horror, I'll read just regular fiction. Like my favorite one to really say is like the Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo.
Mm.
That one is like one of my top favorite books, and so I love to read. I just need to give myself the time to read, and I feel like that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to do this book club, is to actually force myself to make time to read, because I mean, I have like plethora of books in my bookshelf of things that I have not read, but I've bought over the years and I really need to get to.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that bookshelf is like the Hydra monster. Like you cut off one of the heads and 3 more grow back.
I mean, I keep saying if I finish one book, I can buy another, but yet somehow I still end up buying like another 5 books afterwards, even though I've barely finished one. It's the story of my life. But I feel like this is a nice way to kind of shop at what we have / also venture out into new books and explore that. So that's what I'm really excited about for this book club per se, and we call it Brews.
Book Nook Brews. Yeah, so let's talk about the name. Yeah.
Yeah.
How did we come up with the name?
Book Nook. So really, I mean, so I was gifted a little book nook by your sister this past Christmas, and it's something that I might actually get to it next week. But it's something that you use to add decoration or decor to your bookshelf and place next to your books, almost like a bookend, and it just kind of rolls off the tongue very well when you add brews to it.
Book Nook Brews.
As in like coffee or some beer, which is what we have today.
Yeah, today to start it off.
Starting it off with some beer. I think we played a lot with like, I forgot what was another name that we were like kind of debating over, but I know it had brews in it.
Yeah, because we kind of knew it had to have that, because we wanted the little cozy cafe book club type of vibe, but also not just being coffee, because we're both like fanatics of finding new beers, craft beers, going around the local breweries and stuff like that. So we wanted to put that, because we like just relaxing with a nice beer, or in the mornings a nice cup of coffee, and both of those are cozy to us. So having that, and then the book club, like we have to have brews in there.
We have to have something to go along with it. It can't just be, I mean, it can just be like solely books, but you don't just read a book on its own. Or maybe you do, and you know what, to each their own. But I feel like usually you like to read a book with maybe a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, just some sort of beverage to go along with it. And it really shows the kind of mashup of different readers or different types of people, because I'm one that can read a book and drink coffee, but I also really like enjoy beer too, and so does Pablo. Like more so on the beer side.
Yeah.
I'm more of the coffee fanatic, but I'll also enjoy my beer. And he is more of the beer fanatic, but he'll also enjoy a nice cup of coffee.
But just like books, it's a very specific type of coffee that I enjoy. It's not like I wasn't a coffee lover until we started drinking it more together.
Yes.
And I got introduced into other different things, and now I kind of know I can venture out a little bit more, but I'm still within the same area
of what you like. There's a particular taste that you like to coffees, while I know what I do and I don't like, but I'm a little bit more keen onto trying something a little bit different.
Yeah.
And then if that doesn't work, I'll just go to my good old favorites.
Yeah.
But yeah, did we get started on what this month's book is?
Yeah, I guess we can. Yeah.
All right. This book of the month for the month of February is called Sanctuary of the Shadow, and this is by Aurora Asher. And honestly, we came across this book at Target.
Yeah.
One of the many Target runs that we do. And there's something about this particular
I think it was the cover that got you.
It's always the cover. It's always the cover that gets me. They really just know how to do it. But at least for our cover, and I don't think they have paperbacks. I think this book is solely hardback. Essentially is like a black, very dark background with a little sun in the middle, and shows like the circus tent inside of it. And I don't know, it just I think it's kind of giving off, at least the lettering of this book kind of gives off the oh, now I'm forgetting the name, but it's by Sarah Moss. A Court of Thorn and Roses. There we go. All right, the lettering gave off that impression to me, and so I picked it up and started reading the little blurb, and I was like, you know what? I think this might be something that he likes, because it's not purely like, it has some fantasy to it. And so I figured this might be like a nice little compromise between the two of us.
Yeah, and that's when you gave it to me and I read the blurb and I was like, okay, yeah, this could be something I'm into. Now I will say I'm not a big fan of, like, the opposite of you, where you will go to a book because of the cover and almost immediately just buy a book because of the cool cover or something like that. But I have learned not to do that based on, like, I guess the genre that I like, because I would, like, from the library or something, I would check a book out solely because of the cover. And it was like, oh, it's a cool cover, it's fantasy, it has to be cool. Then I get into it and it's not grasping me at all. Like, for me, a book has to grasp me from the very beginning in order for me to keep reading it. I'm not going to sit around and wait. And it's like, oh, no, like a lot of people with, like, shows or animes or movies, it's like, oh, the first bit is kind of boring, or it's not going to grasp you right away, but you got to give it a shot and then it'll, get you into it. I can't do that. Like, it's got to.
It's different with books. Like, books, I mean, I feel like the sole purpose of how the publishing world works is you have to grab the person within the first chapter, within the first couple of pages.
Yeah.
And that's a deal breaker. And granted, there are some books that get to it maybe not even within the first 2 chapters, but it's very rare. Usually how they choose a book is by the first chapter.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what gets me a lot of times, because I go to a cover that's really cool and then I'm snoozing, after the first chapter. It's like, I don't want to keep reading this. So I've learned not to go off of the cover, and sometimes not even the blurb. But in this one, for some reason, I don't know. It's just, I guess I saw it was something that I would be interested, which I'm, of course, going to read right now. But yeah, almost immediately after I read it, it was like, okay, yeah, this could be something I'm really into. So the blurb. So it starts off in bold yellow letters where it says, "Enter at your own risk and discover the greatest show on earth in this explosive, darkly imaginative debut fantasy." So that already kind of grasped me because it's a debut fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, oh, it's the first one. You know, it's a debut. It's we could give it a shot. You know, it's new. So then it continues with, "For humans, the circus is a place filled with wonder and amazement. For Harrow, though, it's a place to hide from those who slaughtered her entire clan. Disguising her abilities as part of her act has kept her true identity safe for years, until he arrives. A strange new attraction with no name, no memory of who or even what he is, let alone an explanation for his odd yet deadly powers. But beneath the layers of anger and isolation, one glimpse into his inky eyes reveals a soul that calls out to the loneliness in her own. And so she chooses him. Harrow is drawn to the darkness, to her insatiable need to soothe the beast who threatens their very existence. But with every secret she unlocks from his past, another from hers whispers free as well, luring enemies who will stop at nothing to get their final revenge on Harrow. And she's afraid she's given them the perfect weapon against her, because he's not what he seems. But maybe it's time they finally learn neither is she." So that's what kind of grasped me immediately, was the fact that, first off, it's people with powers. Like that is, I think one thing that has to be said about me as well is I'm a big comic fan.
Yes.
Just comic books, comic characters, comic movies, whatever. I'm a big fan of that. So as soon as I hear people with powers, people with, and we'll get into this into the book, like hybrid creatures, like in Percy Jackson as well and stuff like that, gods, anything like that, I'm immediately, it's like, okay, let me give this a little more attention. And so as soon as I saw that, I was reeled in. And then it was the whole little mystery of, oh, she gave her the biggest weapon, because she learns he is not who he thinks he is. And then it ends with, neither is she. And that's where I'm like, okay, yeah, tell me more, like, yeah.
I think also too, and I completely agree. I think that was one of the things that captured me, is that I mean, what makes a book good is just discovering things about the characters. And at first it was I'm not really a fan of like circus things per se, but a lot of this was kind of at first kind of giving some vibes. And I don't know if you've seen the movie The Greatest Showman.
I've seen like clips and stuff,
Okay,
but I haven't seen the full movie.
Yeah, you haven't seen that. Okay. It was giving off a little bit of those vibes. Maybe it's just because it's a circus and it's like the first thing that came to my mind. But it sounds like it has a little bit of romance. And I love diving into a new world. Yeah. And being able to immerse myself into it. Yeah. And so I was like, I think it's something that you're going to like. And that's why immediately once I finished reading, I'm like, here, read. Yeah. Read the book.
Because I like adding on to that whole, like, I only like fantasy is because when I read a book, I want to see a movie in my head, like immediately. Even if one doesn't exist, like in this case, like off of that blurb, I basically played a little trailer in my head as I was reading it, and like, I feel like because of all the comics and just all the fantasy I've read, it's and seen, like movies and stuff like that, it's very easy for my brain to imagine what that movie would be like or what that trailer would be like. So I like reading those types of things because as I'm reading, I'm not just looking at words on a page. I actually feel like I'm literally playing the movie.
You're creating the images in your head.
And like that's to add on to the point of that you said where you want to be dragged into the world, you know, like it has to be immersive. It has to be. And I feel like that was really cool. Like with this book too, it has the map of the world in it. And that helped a lot.
It has that like right within, like, I think within, the first page after you see the
title
page, a the dedication, and then there is a nice little a warning at the beginning of the book, so it's nice, like a trigger warning per se, because this book does dive into some dark things per se, and so giving that nice little disclosure at the very beginning of the book, like, hey, you may encounter, at least
like you could actually just read it all, like read it here just in case, you know, because we're gonna be talking about that book for a month.
Might as well.
That way, if anyone is uneasy with the theme of the book as well.
And so you know what? So here's the disclosure. So Sanctuary of the Shadow is an enthralling, riveting story of a mysterious circus and the strange elementals who inhabit it. However, the story includes elements that might not be suitable for all readers. Sex, violence, imprisonment, bodily injury, memory loss, parental death, and coercion are mentioned and shown in the novel. Readers who may be sensitive to these elements, please take note and prepare to enter Salazar's incredible elemental circus. That's a little disclosure. There are some dark topics in the book, although I will say this does not hit, so far, has not hit the dark level of like The Last Poppy. That book, man, and I'm gonna read it again, but that book, jeez. Anyways, but I really liked how the book did include a map. That way, I mean, granted, it's nice to kind of imagine it yourself. However, when it's talking about many different territories or something bigger, it's nice to see how the author imagines it. Yeah. So that way you can kind of warp your images, the imagination of the story to this. That way it's as accurate to how the author is trying to portray it. Yeah.
And it's not like to me, I'm never probably going to go back to the map, like in between the story or something like that. Maybe at the end where I know all the places already. I'm like, oh, that's how that looked. But to me, seeing the map there as soon as I read the blurb was like I was already kind of getting immersed. Then I see a map of the world. I'm like, okay, this is something that's trying to get you immersed. Right. Like the author made a world basically for this, and is not just like a word world, you know, like a world you're supposed to imagine. She went ahead and was like, this is what I think would look like. Immerse yourself, you know, like it maps it out for you. Right. And like you said, it's nice for you to create it on your own. But what like I said, what kind of led me to it was seeing that it was already there. Yeah. So obviously I'm not gonna go back and forth, like I said, to it and structure it out. But it's nice to see that though the world is there. The world is there for you to immerse yourself. All you have to do
even go back to it
is read.
I feel like the only times that I've ever gone back to to the map is if I feel like I'm being jumped around a little bit, or there's a lot of different things that are being talked about. Like per se, in this example, there's a lot of different territories that are being talked about. I think another great example is like Shadow and Bone, where you see there also is a map at the beginning of that book, and when it's a fantasy book that talks about different territories, different countries, different clans per se. It's nice to see mapped out like how far they are, where they're located. That way, if it starts to jump around a little bit, you can kind of reference back to it. Or like you said at the very end of the book, it's like, okay, now I know all these places. Let me kind of compare it to what the author sees it.
Yeah.
So that's always nice to see.
And it's also a cool little like moment to compare.
Yeah.
Like you said, just what did I imagine it as and what it actually looked like.
I agree. And I did also I just wanted to at least mention like who the author is or what she has here. So a little bit about Aurora Asher. She is a fantasy and paranormal romance author and lover of misunderstood monsters, redeemable anti-heroes, and epic happily ever afters. A woman of many creative pursuits, Aurora is also a professional musician, and visual artist, sorry. She currently resides in Montreal with her trusty espresso machine. Oh, I envy her. And her endlessly patient husband, whom she sometimes doesn't see for hours until she emerges from her writing cave like a barren springtime. I like that. I mean, does that not seem like how me when I'm coming out of my little book time to just read? Yeah. So she's a fantasy and paranormal romance author. She does romance, and this is really good. I might have to check out some of her other things. But interesting. A professional musician and visual artist. I wonder if she had anything, or like, if she partook in like this, and creating like her cover.
I'm sure she did. Right. I'm sure she had idea. I mean, considering there's a whole map for it, I'm sure she was like, she had some designs.
I hope so.
And she probably met with people and
who helped her create the design. Yeah. But you know what? Maybe that's something we'll search up for the next episode. Yeah. Episode to see how much like she was involved. I wonder if that information is out. Maybe in her Instagram. We'll see. Yeah. That is to be decided.
One thing that would be really cool, I mean, just to sidetrack a little bit on what we plan for the podcast is eventually maybe even getting an author in here, or
that would be nice
in a call or something, it's to talk about not just their journey as an author, as a person, but what led them to creating that book. Like in this case, this is like it said, a debut, right? So it'd be really cool to maybe shine a light for the author, explain how they came about the idea and all that kind of stuff. So I think that'd be pretty cool. Hopefully we get to that point.
Yeah, we have a lot of thoughts and hopes for this podcast. Really, we just want it to be a space where book lovers of all kind, or even the ones that are just beginning to kind of get into this, it's nothing for someone to feel like, oh, you have to be like a professional book reader or someone who's religious about it. No. We just want to have a nice time. We want to talk about books. We want to dissect them, talk about different other books, just get into it, I guess. Yeah. It's just a time for everyone to relax, unwind. Yeah. Talk about a nice little book with like a beer or coffee, or if you're into teas and you know what, you do you, that too.
Or just even water, dude.
Yeah. Hydrate yourself. But I guess with that being said, let's talk about our initial thoughts prior to the book, like what we thought. I mean, we kind of talked about it a little bit, but I guess
off the blurb.
Yeah, off the blurb. But what else? Like, what else did we think about it? At least for me, like I said, I was a little bit hesitant only because of the circus part, because I'm just not really into that. However, I really like the fantasy aspect of it, and how there's something to be gained and lost by the character. There's
Yeah.
something that seems to be at stake, which is usually how a lot of these books are, but it's just something more.
Yeah.
And that's like, you know what? Let's give it a shot. It has a little bit of romance in it. So can't really go wrong with it. I usually, my little thing, and I didn't check to see about this because, I mean, you know how I feel about YA books or young adult books.
Mm-hmm.
I'm usually not that much of a fan. Something within the writing or like certain themes just bring me back to like high school era, and it just, I'm like, it just sometimes are, and this may just be those books that I've read, but I feel like sometimes they feel a little bit childish per se, or the actions that are going on are a little bit childish, and so I just want to strangle them sometimes. But I was a little bit nervous. I didn't really know too much information, and I didn't really want to look up any information about this. I was like, you know what, we're just gonna go into it and we're gonna see. And so I'm gonna look to see if this is YA or not afterwards once we're finished with it.
Yeah, because maybe even knowing that it's YA
It might
steer
it might steer my thoughts on it. But I don't know. Sometimes you don't really know what kind of, like, what genre of book you're buying into.
Yeah.
And Target in like Barnes and Nobles and like other bookshops, you are gonna know. In Target, you're not really going to.
Yeah.
They just have the books out there. And I don't even think there's anything on here to indicate that. So I'm not even going to try and even find that information. But my initial thoughts were just that there's something, at least, that I'm curious about who the male lead is in this book and what is so, I guess, dangerous about him. And so all I could really do is I just handed the book to Papa. I'm like, we have to read this. I need to figure this out.
Yeah.
So.
I think what I kind of thought was, I liked obviously the fantasy aspect of it, people having powers, like I said, and like hiding those powers, like it's not only for the male lead, who they were saying is, was dangerous, but then has that, what did it say, the look in his eyes or something like that gave that different feel for that. But for the female lead, the protagonist, Harrow.
Hero or Harrow?
I read it in my head as Harrow.
Hero. I put it as Harrow.
For those that are just,
It's Harrow.
That's it, Harrow, I think.
Harrow.
Yeah, but like even for her, she was disguising who she was, right? And so, that kind of leads you to like, oh, why? Why are they hiding who they are? Then it gave those type of, I guess, characters a name. It said elementals. And then it said they were in the elemental circus. And it's like, why are they in a circus, at that point? So it's just overall was a very good way of, it's not really a cliffhanger, but it gives you that little vibe,
a
hook.
It's
yeah,
the hook of it.
It hooks you. And the only thing that did have me a little worried, which is probably the opposite for you, was the romance part. I don't see myself reading much of romance. Now, granted, I didn't think I'd be watching rom-coms, or not watching. I knew I'd be watching rom-coms because of you, but I didn't know I'd be enjoying some rom-coms because of the rom part. I knew I'd like the com, but not the rom. So I mean, and I enjoy some, and some are in my top movies now. Shout out to The Holiday, which is now top 5 Christmas movies for me.
Really? We just watched that this Christmas.
Yeah. And so it's the one thing that was kind of like for me, where it was like there's that little romance aspect to it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then obviously the warning that, you know, and I was like, I've never read anything with a warning in it. So I was like, how like deep is this gonna go? You know, like I'm used to fantasy, but it's like, again, just not even to call it child fantasy, but it's just like
PG, I
guess, because it's like I don't know, stuff you could see in just a movie being put out. That's not, I guess, so PG because it wouldn't be like a rated R movie or anything.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't. So far from what we've read, and I guess we'll kind of segue this into the book itself.
Yeah.
And like what our thoughts are. By the way, for this, at least for just this episode, we're just gonna talk about chapters 1 through 7.
Yeah.
So we've read chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all those, and then the next one will be another little set of chapters. But oh my gosh, I lost my train of thought. There goes the first time in the podcast where I lose my train of thought. Trust me, we can keep a count. By the end of the year, it's going to be over like 5,000. I don't know, man. It happens too much. But
you know, that's a merch idea. A shirt with a train on it saying I'm lost.
I'm lost my train of thought, literally. But maybe this is not going back to what my train of thought was, but this is something that I was thinking about. When you were talking about the warning, that's what, and I already talked about this book earlier, but the last Poppy War, there we go, or the Poppy War, sorry, not even the last Poppy War, the Poppy War. If you guys have not read that is so dark. It is, that is such a dark book, and when I told you that I finished it, I was like, this is heavy. This is some heavy stuff, and I don't even think there was a warning on that one. I might have to go, like I said, I need to go back and reread that one, but I don't think there was a warning on it. And oh my gosh, I compare to that one so far, not too dark. I want to say, I think so far what some of the darkness that we've had seen is a capturing of someone, or like keeping them held in a cage.
Yeah, but I mean, even that isn't really like, it's dark, but in the way that it was done, it's your typical fantasy capturing a creature, you know, something like that.
I'm wondering,
which we'll get into.
But new, like maybe adding a warning to your books. I thought that was a nice detail, though.
It may be not something new, but it was something the author was
wanted to
like
add.
You know, thinking about the audience, you know, which is really cool to see as well. So.
But I guess really talking about the book, let's see. Yeah. What are some of your favorite moments of the book? Because right now, from these 7 chapters, we've gotten to meet Haro. Mm-hmm. Her best friend, Malachi. Yeah. Malachi
is how I would say, yeah.
Really pretty much just the introduction to the circus itself.
Now, before we go even further, let's just, obviously this goes without saying, but spoiler.
Yeah, there's like, going to be spoilers.
Obviously this, like we said, this episode is just for the first 7 chapters.
Yeah.
So if you're, you know, for some reason looking into reading the book, or are reading it right now and looking for reviews of what people think so far,
this book discussion, or all about it,
or even, you know, well, if you're those 2 areas, obviously spoilers. We're always going to say what chapters we've read at the beginning, so that way if you're reading it but you're not that far ahead, you know not to listen yet, or maybe you just like spoilers and you want to find out anyway, but you're going to read either way, or you're just not going to read the book but you want to hear about it. You know, we're always going to let you know what part we're on. Spoiler warning at the beginning before we even start talking about it.
I mean, every episode is going to be a spoiler.
Yeah.
I am so sorry. But I mean, that's the purpose of a book club, is to talk about the book.
Yeah.
So, so I guess I'll just recap kind of what what so far we've read
Yeah.
for chapters, like for 1 through 7. So far, we've met again Haro, her best friend Malachi. You got introduced to the circus life.
Yeah.
At the very beginning, there is an issue of wherever they're set up at their camp right now. They do have some like protesters outside. Humans.
So we can like segue that into, or get something to segue that into is the circus is what they call the elemental circus.
Yes.
So it's full of these
Hybrids.
hybrid creatures, people,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they all like there's some that look human, but then have powers,
Yes.
or have features of something else, like an animal or something like that, right? So Harrow looks human,
Mm-hmm.
and I think one of the things, right, that you could tell that they're an elemental is the pointed ears.
Yes.
So they could look human, but then you look at their ears and they're pointed up, so
Mm-hmm.
they're elementals.
Yes.
And then there's others that are straight up hybrids of an animal and a person.
Like Malachi.
Like Malachi was
She's-
like a Black Panther.
Yeah, a
right?
Black Panther.
So she's got the body and the face of a panther. Now I don't know if they described this, but I've imagined her like this in my head, walking on 2 feet.
I mean, I
like
think so.
Like an athletic build, but walking on 2 feet, like a person, but the body of a Black Panther, right? Is how I've imagined it. Kind of like Madagascar,
Oh my
where the
God.
feet, like the lions and stuff like that, walk on 2 feet.
No.
So like that way now we can describe each character the way they are. So Harrow, we've met Harrow, the protagonist, seems like, right, at this point.
Yeah.
Human looking, but has the pointed ears, but is always hiding it with her hair.
Yeah, she has
Or-
curly hair, if I remember correctly. Curly?
Malachi, yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Malachi, Black Panther. She's like the gymnast of the circus. She's like the main act. No,
Yeah, she's like one
she's
of
like
the main
prized
acts.
possession of Salazar, who runs the circus leader.
Yes, and he also he's described to be, he gives off the energy or the look of a human, but he's not human. He's also an
he's
elemental.
got the evil powers.
Yeah, he also has some sort of powers.
Now I don't think they've talked about him having pointed ears, but I'm assuming that's hidden by how I picture him having long
he has
hair.
a hat, though, I think.
Long hair, and then the
Oh,
circus leader hat, the top
Yeah.
hat. But yeah, I like the way that I've read about him and stuff like that. I imagine him as a mix between, I don't know his name, the actor's name, but the guy that played Hades in the Lightning Thief movie, the original one. I imagine a mix between him and if Scar from The Lion King
What the heck?
was a person. Like, put both of those together, and that's kind of like the vibe that I'm getting. I think maybe the name itself, Salazar,
For me, Salazar, he's a tall guy, fairly built. He's tall but large. Not like his build is very large to where as soon as he comes into the room, he takes up space because of his presence. And again, his build is a little bit, just for me, seems like a little bit big. So to me, he seems like that. It gives off a very menacing sort of presence, very dark so far. And there are some things to kind of back that up too. But so we've met him, Malachi. Again, it's just a circus of elementals, so a lot of hybrids, a lot of people with certain powers or abilities
And
that
then
fits in
there's
like a circus. And then you have
the one human.
technically two. Well, yes, one human, Haro, she's just disguising herself as
a
one
human,
for like the first maybe 3 to 4 chapters.
Yeah, I think it was the 4th.
Maybe even 5. Yeah. And then she slowly starts to show, and finally,
Not to everyone though.
Yeah,
but
not to everyone.
So technically, I guess we could say she's still a human
to
to
some.
most.
I think by chapter 7, when she goes to Malachi, she's like
I've had enough.
I've had enough.
Yeah,
I'm
not
not
gonna
gonna hide myself.
Yeah.
But going back to that, the beginning of the book starts off with a conflict with humans coming up to the entrance of the circus, calling them different names, asking them to leave, and Hero and Mal are just looking at them like, what?
Yeah.
And just really like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And not to give too much away, but like one of their fellow colleagues is stuck in the little ticket booth.
Yeah.
And he's a fox hybrid. If I remember correctly, he's a fox hybrid. Things get a little bit out of hand, and so the big boss, Mr. Salazar, comes in and essentially had to show some of his powers or use it to be able to drive them away.
Scare them away, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so their plans of staying at this campsite for like another few days has now changed to where they're going back to, and I think they end up going to, let me reference the little the map. They're going to Allegra.
Yeah. So they set up that same day. They were about to have a show the next day. They were finishing up setting up. They just got there that day, but then all those humans showed up and were like basically threatening to destroy the circus itself, the campsite. So they were like, all right, Salazar took it upon himself to drive them away, and he's like, we're leaving tonight, like everything that you unpacked, pack up again.
We're out, sorry, we're not staying here anymore, let's go. And to kind of talk a little bit more about the elementals too, because we get to know about them a little bit in these chapters. It's something that one of the queens created.
Yep.
And essentially they are just a hybrid of humans and something else.
Yeah.
And this is just going off by what I see on here when I'm reading here, literally off the book. Just something to know about them. They're not the same to the full extent of humans, like reproductive wise. They essentially, and I'm just going to read it from here. It says, elementals would never base a mating off the desire for an heir. A couple would never be together their entire 1,000-year lifespan without ever conceiving. So they're humans, but they also don't work the same way. They don't age the same way as humans. And this is something that's brought up early because the other human who is actually a human in this circus is, what's it?
Lauren, no?
Lauren, yeah. Lauren. And he's in his 50s and has been around the same time as Harrow has been, but she doesn't look 50.
Aging,
she's is not aging the same way as Lauren is.
Yeah.
He looks, his age is starting to catch up, and for him, he always thought that he was not the only human here because Harrow has been disguising herself as a human. Because I guess, do we get into what happened to her? Yeah, because
she's a seer is what they call her. Her type.
But she's the first water elemental born in a century. Yeah. And at least her clan, her family, were all killed off. Yeah. And she was one of the only surviving ones. And so she didn't want to have whatever attacked her family come after her. And so she sought refuge at the circus. And so that's why she covers her ears. Yeah. And she thought that nobody knew what she was.
Yeah. And at this point, she still thinks that, but it's kind of like maybe they do know.
Yeah. And at this point, she's ready to reveal herself because after this, and they move over to the new campsite, like the next chapter or so is where we meet the male protagonist or the male lead, who's very aggressive, but in a I need to like, I need to save my life. I need to make sure that I live.
Yeah.
I need to survive.
'Cause
He's very much flight or fight mode right now.
Because we met him at what was described as a desert, right? He was just laying there, no memory whatsoever. He was just kind of like, he woke up, but was borderline dead,
Yeah.
like dehydrated, naked, just laying there on his own, has no idea where, who, or what he is.
Exactly.
Until someone tries capturing him, then he tries to like fight back and stuff, but obviously does not have the energy to do so, which is where he gets captured. And here comes that fight or flight mode where he's desperate to get out of that. Now, obviously, he doesn't know why he's being captured at that time because, like I said, he does not have memory of anything whatsoever.
He doesn't know his name. He doesn't even know how he got there. He has no idea why he's so weak.
Yeah.
And that's something that throughout at least the 7 chapters we don't find out
Yeah.
at all. He still just has memory loss.
Yeah. And then the people that captured him took him to like a market, I guess, right? It was what they called it. And that's where the two stories start colliding, and we find out that it was Salazar that went to go, basically, it sounds bad, but to go buy him.
Yeah.
And so there he is buying this. They don't know yet. Like, I mean, it's a human at this point, right? But then that's
he has wings.
He showed his wings. He showed that he could change color, I believe.
He can change his physical form.
Yeah. Well, he didn't really change his form then. He had only changed the color that he was, and then the wings. And that's when Salazar is like, I know what you are. Taking him, and I'm going to get you to then show your actual form, like physical form. Because according to him, he's stuck in that human body.
Because he's weak.
Yeah. And
Salazar thinks that he is
what they call a wraith.
A wraith.
WRAITH. I'm only spelling that because that's how Wraith gets his name. His type is, well, what Salazar thinks is a wraith with a W, but Lauren is asked to make the sign that will describe what he is, and spells wraith RAITH without W. And Salazar calls him stupid and all that. But obviously, the character now named Wraith saw the sign from his cage and was like, that's my name, I guess, for now, because I can't remember anything.
Yeah. And he just adopts the name for now. He's like, they think I'm so scary. Like, I don't even know what's going on. Yeah. Granted. And I'll get to this part later. Hopefully I'll remember. But for right now, he just doesn't really know what he is. He's just pretty much getting transported from one place to another, still captured in a cage. And Salazar does a lot of enchantments on his cage to make sure that he stays there, because he really believes that he is a wraith. Yeah. And I hope that I bookmarked the portion where he's talking to him, and that's the part where I was like, Salazar knows what Harrow is. Or Harrow, yeah. So I guess a little bit more about the world itself. I'll just read this little bit. But in the book it says, supposedly, after Fury's warlord mate was killed in a raid on Daira's border, the Fire Queen lost her mind. She blamed Daria and retaliated. And then the other queens joined in the fighting until humans got sick of it and turned against them. The queens were forced to retreat and hide in their castles, and their once noble elementals became shunned outcasts of society. So that's just a little bit about the queens, because they mention a lot of different queens. The Fire Queen, and I believe the Fire Queen is the ones responsible for the creation of wraiths. Yep. But in this moment, race, at least to what Haro and others believe, they're just ghost-like creatures, shadows, an entity that you don't really know exists. They almost call them
Basically a legend, like a not even a myth.
a myth. Yeah,
Was
almost
it a
like
myth?
a myth. Yeah, I think that's what they said. It's like that's just a myth. No one has ever seen one. But I believe the Fire Queen is the one responsible for creating Wraith, but they are also considered to be just a myth because no one has ever seen one. But they're supposedly responsible for the massacre of so many people, of so many groups of elementals.
Well, it's just the seers, no? The water type.
At least for right now, is what we
Yeah.
know. But they're known for being just cold-hearted assassins.
Yeah.
Whatever the queen wants, that's what they do.
Yeah.
And so, and I think that's what Salazar tells Wraith too, is that he's like, you may not like be what you are, what I know you are right now, but the moment your owner has that one inkling of a thought, you'll do her bidding.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember that, but that's something that he mentioned to her. He's like, there's someone here that you are responsible for, like, her doom, like for her tragic, like the tragedy that has happened in her life. He's like, I cannot wait, like, for you to like
For like the reveal. Yeah.
yeah, for like the reveal.
Yeah.
Because he hits him before he leaves, hits him in the back. He's like, this is for her.
Yeah.
That's when I knew it. And once
Yeah.
I knew, that was my moment. I was like, I knew it. He knows what Hero is.
Yeah.
Because Wraiths are responsible for the death of all water elementals.
Yeah.
Or at least their clan. And so going back to it, Wraith makes it to the circus. And then for some odd reason, Hero gets up at night and something draws her over to the tent that Wraith is in. And that's when they first meet.
Yeah.
And there's something about him that just makes her, that just draws her attention to him, per se.
Well, I think it was that the fact that he was in a cage,
That too.
beaten up, but she sensed no evil. Like, according to her, the water types can sense evil in someone.
They can sense when they've killed someone.
Oh yeah, killed
it
someone.
tears or does something to their soul.
Yeah.
And that never wipes away.
Yeah. And she saw the sign that said Wraith, and she's like, Salazar thinks you're a Wraith, but you've not killed anyone, at least from what she can tell. And then the fact that she's getting signs from the water, like the water speaking to her or whatever, telling her that there's something wrong and leading her to him, basically. She just knew he was different, and I guess just also the treatment that he was getting. She just already didn't like, but then on top of that, the water was telling her this meeting needed to happen.
And that's a reoccurring thing so far, these 7 chapters, is that the water talks to her. Again, she is a water elemental, but it speaks to her and kind of guides her in the right, let me not even say right path, but just guides her in life and guides her in her decisions that she takes.
Yeah.
And so, in this particular moment, she goes to him, and she's already had some instances prior to meeting him to where the water tells her that there's something that's about to change. And in the circus, she is a fortune teller.
Yeah, like a card reader type of thing.
She is a fortune teller, so she can tell the future, or at least see what's going to happen. and she kind of hides bits of truth in her card readings by like in her card reading. So she'll tell them a little like the general things, and then here and there, depending on who she gets, she may reveal a little bit more. Like there's this one client where for some reason she just wanted to open up a little bit more about what she sees in her future.
Yeah.
Tells her that she's pregnant, but she may want to reconsider her marriage.
Yeah.
And so and that's when they get into the part is like that at least the point Hera was making is that her husband essentially it was insinuating to the fact that her husband was having an affair because they had been trying for so long to have a kid, and it wasn't until now that she was able to they were able to procreate one. I mean, she barely found out, but it sounds like he was having an affair because she was not able to get pregnant. And so that's how she started talking about elementals are not like that because they don't steer their life in having an heir, rather than it takes them forever to even procreate because they live for thousands of years.
Yeah.
So going back, the water was speaking to her and already telling her that Wraith needed her help. And so she started to visit him every night because she felt bad that he was just there in a cage all alone. And she started bringing different things to do. She would read him one of her books. And even though he wasn't much of a talker, he would listen. And he was already very kind of aggressive to others, but yet to Haro, he wasn't at all.
He was basically talking with his eyes. Like he was curious. He'd mentioned a few things, but what a good segue there is like one of the things I really liked about it was that especially during their conversations, they split it into her speaking and like her point of view of what she was seeing Wraith do and all that. And then there's that little break in the page where then it kind of like switches into Wraith's point of view. The same conversation, but what he was thinking and feeling during that convo. And that's one of the things I really liked because that helped. Like I said, I like playing the movie in my head. That helped put the movie together for me, you know? And so what would happen during their conversations is you would get what she sees and how she sees him. And then you'd see what he thinks of her and why he's doing the things that he's doing and stuff like that.
Do you know why that's possible, though?
Why what's possible?
For you to kind of imagine it that way?
No.
Or for it to be portrayed? It's because this book is in third person. And I feel like I've talked about that with you. My thoughts on third person. I feel, and this is me as a reader, third person books usually kind of steer me away. There's something about it that takes me a while to get immersed. I just generally prefer first person, which is something that, at least by what you're saying right now, it wouldn't give you the same experience.
Yeah.
And that's what third person has its pros and its cons, but with having third person, it gives you that flexibility to, if you know how to write it well, pause and kind of get you into the next perspective or get you into the next scene with someone else's perspective and flow seamlessly like it did here.
Yeah.
What else did you like about it? Like what was your favorite moment within these 7 chapters?
Favorite moment? I think it would be the conversations they had. Just because of I guess in this case, you know, you gave it a name, the third person. It was just, to me, it was just seeing the different point of view just kind of go back and forth, but without confusing me.
Right.
just seeing both different points of views for the same conversation, basically during the conversation.
Right.
Like, it's not like, oh, here's the conversation, this is Harrow's point of view. A chapter later, we go back to that conversation, but now see it through his eyes or something like that. Like, that's one thing I've seen a lot in other types of books. It's like they wait a bit to revisit that and tell you what that person thought during that moment. In that case, like, to me, that would be considered like a flashback, but through their point of view. And that's what I don't like. I liked that it went back and forth right there
between the points of views in that moment. Yeah. And just to wrap up the last few chapters and then go back to that, because Wraith has not been shown to anyone so far. Harrow has been visiting in secret because they have him caged up. Salazar's idea is, and like you said earlier, is to show him.
Yeah.
To essentially be like, this is the first Wraith caught. Come look and view him. Like, show him as a spectacle.
Yeah.
And she didn't like that at all. But in one of these visits, she got caught.
Yep.
And Salazar tells her, like, to her, she's like, how can you stand to be here with him? Do you not know what he is, what he has done? Like, insinuating, like, he's literally the cause of why your entire family has died.
Yeah.
And she is hell-bent on that. No, that's not what he is. And they go back and forth arguing. And finally he's like, no, we are going to show him. She's like, no, give me 1 week. Or give me until the next show. Let him train under me to where he's not having to be in a cage. Let me get him show ready.
Yeah.
And Salazar is like, okay, I'll let you do it. But just know that I'm not going to cut you some slack. If you mess this up, it's going to bring consequences to you.
Yeah.
And at this point, she has not been at the other side of his, like, wrath per se, because Salazar is kind of, she was a part of the circus, but she's also not, she hasn't shown herself to be like an elemental to where she is given the same treatment as them per se.
Yeah.
And so at this point, she says, okay. And what does she do? After he leaves, she tells Wraith that they're going to escape. And so chapter 7 essentially is her going over to Malachi and
revealing her plan.
Yeah, revealing her plan and telling her that she is done hiding herself and they need to create a plan to escape.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that was one of my favorite moments. Aside from the aha moment, I was like, ha, I knew it. Salazar knows what she is.
Yeah.
My other favorite moment was her finally deciding to not hide herself. She's like, you know what? I've hidden myself for so long. I don't want to keep on doing it. It's exhausting. I want to just be myself, and I'll deal with the consequences or with what happens as it comes. But I just cannot with this anymore. And something within her is telling her that she just needs to follow Wraith or help him.
Yeah.
And that is her ultimate plan so far. And I just, at least for me, that was my favorite part. That's what I enjoyed the most out of the book so far. And I did have like my favorite description was done in chapter 4, and it's she craved to know the stillness of the indigo abyss, to be cradled by an unseen embrace. And I don't know, I just like the description of it, of her being in water and almost kind of just laying there, being surrounded by water. It's a different description I haven't heard of, and I just, that was chef's kiss. Um, was there anything that stood out to you in description wise or writing wise? I mean, we already have discovered that you like third person point of view,
Yeah.
but what else? Did it
Like,
keep you engaged throughout the whole 7 chapters?
yeah. Like, it was, I think even from the first chapter, just finding out about the elementals, the hybrids, the powers they each had, and stuff like that, that's what kind of reeled me in
Mm-hmm.
immediately. And then from then on, I think it was just something new happened every chapter, but not to the point where it's like, oh, what now? What's gonna happen here? Like it's gonna
Right.
completely change. No, it was all flowing perfectly. Like it was like there's new points to the story in every chapter, and so I guess that's one of the things I do like about it. Then I guess the immersiveness that it or the flow.
You like the flow of the book, yeah.
Yeah, the flow of the book. Um, it's not where it's like, oh, this chapter I could have skipped over
Mm-hmm.
or something like that. You know, every little thing is kind of
Important.
yeah,
I will say one thing that made me mad was Harrow is right now all ready to leave, like just get up and leave everything she has built for herself and run away with Wraith. I don't know. Like I get it. I get it. The water is talking to you and it's telling you to like you need to follow him, you need to help him. But there's like this point and I bookmarked it because it was Malachi who's like literally trying to talk some sense into her, telling her, hey, like, dude, you're about to leave everything for someone you have just barely met.
yeah,
And so I was like, yes, you tell her, knock some sense into her so that way she understands what is going on. But that was my one little, at first, it was like my one little gripe at the story until we got to this point was just that, are you really about to leave everything for someone you just met?
yeah,
But it's nice to have that other character to kind of be the voice of reason or give another thought to Harrow to just think about, like, are you really about to leave everything behind for someone you just met?
yeah,
And so I was really about to be like, oh, I can't believe this is going to be one of those books. But no, I'm like really curious as to how this is going to unfold within the next couple of chapters because she's going to leave. But what is she going to do? Where is she going to go? What is their adventure going to be?
yeah. What's the purpose of them? Like right now, the what it seems like is just not having him killed.
Yes.
But then what? Like, cool, you escape the circus. What then? You're just going to hide from the circus? You're just going to hide from Salazar, who's going to be hunting you down? That's what you want?
And what do you think is going to happen within the next couple of chapters?
Well, obviously, they discussed their plan. I don't think that's going to work
No.
at all. I think Salazar is too smart, and obviously, we haven't learned about his powers.
Yeah.
We know he's got the wizardry
Side to his.
side to him, but we also don't know. You know, there could be something secret about him or something. I don't know. Like, you know, Harrow is a seer, so she can see. Like she knows your fortune basically, almost, right? The water can tell you about a person. Who knows? Maybe he can read people a different way or something. Like he finds out what the plan is.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, they're trying to like trick him because there's that plan where it's like they're gonna make it look like she ran away, but really she's gonna be hiding in the city.
Yeah,
because
hiding in plain sight.
In plain sight, and they think by stealing a horse or whatever, he's immediately gonna think that they went out of the city. I feel like he's gonna read right through that. Like he might send people out just because, there is a horse missing. Let's cover our bases. I'm gonna stay here because I think she's here.
Right. No, I actually think the same thing. I don't think this escape plan is going to work.
Yeah.
Or I feel like something may happen to where they might actually have to be in a show. Like they might actually have to perform.
Yeah.
Because I feel something is going to go wrong. There's no way that this plan is going to work.
Yeah.
And if they try, I don't think Hero's going to get far.
No.
I don't even know. They don't even know how to unlock this cage. They just think with like a little, they'll figure out the lock and that's how they're, going to take care of that. But it's under more enchantment. So I just don't see how that's going to successfully work. It just seems so weird.
Right.
But I'm also on the same page where I don't think this is going to work. So I feel that they may end up having to perform or do something. But then again, there's going to be a risk in showing if Wraith is actually a Wraith.
Yeah.
Then how will that change Harrow's thoughts on him?
Mm-hmm.
Is he that new? Is that much of a baby to where maybe he hasn't done anything bad?
But could.
Yeah, but could. Because he does have...
the feeling of wanting to...
Yeah, he does have aggressive or malicious thoughts.
Yeah.
Not to her, but to others. But it feels like more of a self-protectiveness per se.
Like for the people that captured him and for Salazar, he's like, I could get out of this cage and murder you right now.
Yeah. He's like strangle them and just end their lives. But, he doesn't. And so, because he was weak at that point. Now I'm wondering, now that he's had so much food, could he be strong enough to just leave the cage? With enchantments and all, could he be that strong?
It could also lead to the point where maybe their plan goes wrong and Salazar is about to like punish Harrow or whatever, and Wraith doesn't like seeing that, so he breaks out of the cage because of how strong he is now.
And protects him. Yeah. Protects her.
Yeah.
Next week we'll be covering chapters 8 through 15.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll see how else this keeps unfolding.
Yeah.
I'm actually excited for it. I'm still a little bit hesitant, I think, compared to you. I'm interested in the book. I'm just wondering if the plot of the story will be in something that'll fully capture my attention. I think right now I just need to read more to know where we're going to go. Because right now we've met at least the people right now that we needed to meet. Now, what is the point? Where are we going?
Yeah.
We're going to escape. Is that the whole point of the book? No, I feel like there's something more. There has to be something more.
And I feel like with me, I'm kind of hesitant on it because I can see this going into the romance side. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, can't it just be about someone trying to help the other person? Not have your classic, the female protagonist falls for the male, or the vice versa, the male falls for the female, or whatever. It's like, can't he?
I love this part.
Can't he just get the help getting out of the cage and like surviving, bro? Like that they don't have to like date or anything at the end.
And see, for me, I like that portion. It's just, for me, you have to make it to where I believe that they're in love, not just because there's some sort of connection that's already binding them together. That's the part where it takes me a little bit to get into, and sometimes I feel like that might be where this is going to, and that's making me a little bit nervous that they're bounded from inception or whatever. I mean, I like the whole soulmates thing. However, I can't know that you're already falling in love for this dude on chapter 7, man.
Yeah.
No. Who knows? Maybe times are different in this book. Maybe that's, maybe in this world you fall in love within 2 days. but for me, it doesn't make that believable.
I mean, she has been apart from everyone.
Yeah,
like in her circus, but it's like at the same time, the first guy you meet.
Yeah.
And you're like.
Oh, I did want to say one more thing. I'm suspicious about Lauren.
About Lauren?
Something about him seems fishy. I don't know. I feel like he's gonna do something bad. I don't.
No, yeah, I feel like it's gonna have to do with like he's gonna learn that Harrow isn't human, and he's gonna feel lied to and betrayed.
I think she told him.
Oh yeah. Afterwards, yes, and then he ran away from the caravan. So yeah, I think now he was already Salazar's pet, but I feel like now he's gonna want to help Salazar because he's like, you lied this whole time. You betrayed me.
I almost feel like he might even have it out for Salazar or just all elementals, because at this point, granted, he's the only one who is like quote unquote in good terms with elementals, but not all humans like them.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I almost feel like he might be the one who has remorse towards them, but we just don't know why.
Yeah.
But that's just me. I'm not liking Lauren. He seems suspicious and I'm not liking him. But hopefully we'll get to find out a little bit more within these next couple of chapters. And I think that might just be the little end of the first episode.
Yeah.
Lots to talk about. Lots to still get to know us.
Yeah.
But I guess we'll just do it bit by bit and take it from there.
Yeah.
So we'll see you guys next week to discuss chapters 5 through 15.
Nope.
For
8 through 15.
8 through 15 for Sanctuary of the Shadows.
Yeah. See you then.
Adios.